Alright, so I'm not going to waste any of your time today. I'm going to start this video out by saying these are quite possibly the best stock switches ever made. If you want something that's going to feel and sound good with little to no work, you've come to the right video. The Prevail Epsilon switches are all that and then some. I mean, there is a reason why these are selling out instantly every time they drop. Now, these do come in packs of 70, 90, and 110, with the 70 pack setting you back $45.50 or 65 cents a switch. Very competitive, especially since they come ready to go. Switches like the Alpacas, another JWK switch, although they are $38.50 or 55 cents a switch, those need to be lubed and filmed, which is going to add to the overall cost of the switch. Like I mentioned, these are JWK switches, which are made of all nylon design for the top and bottom housing, and they have JWK's newer P3 stem, the same one that's on their critically acclaimed Duroc Palm linear switches. Now, immediately when you take these out of the bag, you'll be surprised at just how smooth these feel. It's like nothing I've ever touched before. It felt like they were already lubed and filmed, to be honest with you, but they're only lightly lubed, which is pretty consistent, might I add. There's very little stem wobble, which eliminates the need for films, although you can use them here. Now, when you open the switch, you'll be greeted with the top housing and stem trying to bust out at you because of the 68 gram progressive gold plated long spring. And when I say long, I mean long. So you might be asking, what makes a progressive spring different than a linear spring that you find on like 98% of all switches? And it comes down to the fact that when you press down on it, the force needed to press down the spring becomes greater as you go down the switch. So near the bottom, you're gonna get more resistance. You can see this visually near the top of the spring, which is more tightly wound. On other switches like the Glorious Links that I have here, it's uniform all the way through and smaller. And you only need to apply the same force all the way down the spring. Now, what I found is that this long progressive spring helps with the smoothness of this switch. It gives you a nice smooth bottom out when you're typing. It kind of forces your key press back up. It's a different feeling, but a very familiar one at the same time. You probably wouldn't even know what's going on unless you open up the switch to see what's going on. Now, another thing that separates this switch from other switches is that it has a long pull on the stem. The pull is longer, meaning you'll feel the bottom out of the switch compared to the shorter pull that you find on like 95% of switches. I'm just throwing out random percentages. The Holy Pandas are another switch that have a long pull, and that's one of the reasons why they are so satisfying. You get that tactile bump plus the feel and sound of the pull tapping the bottom of the housing. Needless to say, the P3 stem and the elongated spring make for a unique typing experience. So next up, I did a few tests versus some other linear switches that I love. I put them on my Rama M65B with the PVD brass plate. There are going to be some variances because the switches are on different parts of the board, but it's just to generally give you an idea of how they all are sounding. I did a stock versus stock, I did a stock versus lube, and a bunch of other tests. So grab some water, grab some coffee, grab some wine, whatever you need to just chill out, sit back, and enjoy these sound tests. Alright, so running these stock is very doable. They have that depth that comes from lubing and filming a switch, whereas the other stock ones were really lacking the depth and sounded quite hollow, even rattly at some points. For the second test, I did a little trick. That was actually a stock Epsilon versus all lube switches and filmed, and it holds its own. Lubed, I couldn't really tell the difference until I did a full sound test. It adds a bit more depth to the switch, and to my surprise, it actually made the switch feel, dare I say, a bit thockier instead of smoother. Pretty interesting stuff. So if you want something that's smoother, I will stay stock. If you want something more thockier, go ahead and lube and film these. Now I did put these up against the Aqua Kings, another switch I felt like can do without the lubing and filming. When I did this, it actually exposed the Aqua King's leaf ping a little bit, which I didn't really notice beforehand. Man, these Epsilon switches are just crazy. I'm not gonna call it yet, but these might be replacing Gateron Black Inks as my favorite linear switch. It might make their way onto some of my other in-game boards. Well, definitely gonna go on my 7V. One thing to note is that when I was opening these switches, some of the leaves did pop out, so it's not completely perfect yet. Maybe in the V2 they can fix that, similar to what Gateron did with the inks. But for the most part, all of them stayed in. Only a couple, I'd say about 3 or 4 out of 90 actually popped out on me. So currently these aren't available, sadly, as they were just on pre-order. Ah man, to be a keyboard enthusiast, wow. Man, you can't get anything these days. It looks like they will be getting the pre-orders in February for those orders that they just had, and hopefully they'll have some extras to go around at that time. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel, because I'll be posting on my community page when these will be available again for pre-order or just to purchase. All right, so it has been your boy BT. This has been the Epsilon switches from Prevail. Hope you liked it. Hope you enjoyed all the sound tests. It has been your boy BT saying